AIDS is considered to be as low as 1% of the world, hence not considered a risk country. The focus on these programs in Pakistan and India is technically supported by UN agencies and Global Fund against AIDS, TB, and malaria. I'm also board of trustee for Global Fund, Friend of South of Asia, whose office it is in Confederation Indian of Industry in Delhi. I represent Pakistan. Malaria, the second most prevalent and devastating communicable disease in the country, has been the major cause of morbidity in both countries, ranking more than 90% rural, 10% urban area of disease burden in Pakistan and India. Pakistan is ranked amongst 20th high disease burden country of the world. 40% of the burden of disease in Pakistan is the form of communicable disease, such as malaria and TB. More than 0.9 million patients of TB are in Pakistan and 2.5 million in India. It is estimated that about 40% of Indian population is infected with TB bacteria. This is very important. India's victory over polio has unexpected consequences, but in the process, a rise in the prevalence of another polio-like condition, acute flaccid paralysis, has been recorded, known as AFP. And in my opinion, we homeopaths can do a lot of in this AFP. The condition is the sudden onset of muscles weakness or the inability to move limbs and can be telltale sign of polio, but is also a symptom of other disease, including transverse myelitis, which cause injury to the spinal cord, Guillain-Barré syndrome, a nerve disorder, and Japanese encephalitis, a mosquito-borne virus. Global Polio Eradication Initiative, WHO, Rotary International, the US Center for Disease Control, UNICEF, and federal government said in the report that Pakistan's anti-polio program was a disaster that threatened other effort to eradicate the crippling of disease. It is continuous to flounder hopelessly as the virus flourishes. The report said home to 80% of the world polio cases. 80% of the world polio cases in Pakistan. Pakistan is now the major stumbling block to global polio eradication. All forms of hepatitis are of concern within public health framework. Investigates meeting the challenges posed by the high prevalence of viral hepatitis in Pakistan and India. Both the government initiated different programs aims to reduction in new cases of hepatitis B and C through advocacy and behavior changes communication. Hepatitis B vaccine of high-risk group, establishing of screening, diagnosis, and treatment facilities. Non-communicable diseases. Chronic non-communicable diseases are the #1 cause of death and disability in the world. Most of them are cancer, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and chronic lung illness. In cancer, we have a Viscum album, Trazecum, Echinacea purpura, Gallium apreva, Ornithogalum, Asterias rubens, Calcium carb, Phytoleuca, Iodum, Hydrastis. In cardiovascular, we have Crataegus, Valeriana, Arjuna, Digitalis, Vanadium, Cubracho, Similarly, in diabetes, we have Cephalendra indica, very good result, Syzygium jambulum, Gemnium sylvestra, Arsenicum album, Arsenicum rome, Arsenicum album. In chronic lung illness, we have Beryllium metallicum, Arsenicum iodide, Kali carb, Iodum, Spongia, Stannum metallicum. I would like to also share the disease fibrosis of the lungs. Valium metallicum work very good. Cancer treatment has been considered as one of the deadliest form of non-communicable disease, and the number of cases is increasing alarmingly. And in India has taken remarkable progress in diagnostics and treatments. Breast cancer possesses a serious health risk for women throughout the world. More than 1 million women worldwide are diagnosed with breast cancer every year. It is estimated that 1 in 12 Pakistani women will develop breast cancer at some stage of their life. In India, about 100,000 cases of the breast cancer are reported every year. Mother and child health has been one of the priority area of public health in Pakistan and India. Several programs has been launched by the both government in order to improve maternal and neonatal health services for all, particularly the poor and disadvantaged at all level of health care delivery system. It aims to provide improved access to high quality of mother and child health and family planning services. Despite these modalities, Pakistan has shown a modest improvement in this segment, and the infant mortality rate and child mortality rate are still very high as compared to India and other countries in the region, as compared to India and other countries of the region. It is in West case that success implementation of this project will bring these indicators in respective range with improved health status of mother and children. Sorry. We can play a very important role in maternal and child health. During my tenure as a convener, I have started several health center for mother and child. Initially, we developed 5. Later on, we go to 10,000 mother and child health. No question whether they are allopath doctor or homeopathy doctor. Population, labor force, and employment. Employment scenario. Pakistan has the 10th and India has the second largest labor force in the world. The total labor force in Pakistan is 60.09 million, and India it is 497 million. Out of this, 3.58 million and 21 million people are unemployed, and 56.52 and 476 million people are employed. Pakistan is the 6th, and India being the second most populous country in the world. First is China. With population growth rate around is 1.92 and 1.22, we have already discussed. Is adding a large people to the labor force. Youth employment has remained one of the major concern of the government. Youth in both countries face various disadvantages, including limited job search, expertise, mismatch between education, aspirations, and employers' requirement, and lack of mobility, among other factors. Regional countries, human development indicators. Pakistan life expectancy 2013 is 66.6. Infant mortality rate per 1,000 is 69.0. Under 5 mortality rate per 1,000 is 85.5. Maternal mortality rate per 100,000 is 170. Population growth rate 2013 is 1.92. India is 66.5, 41.4, 52.7, and 190. Population growth, it is 1.24. In other countries, you have seen it. Health and nutrition expectation. I have received details only from Ministry of the Pakistan. I couldn't find out India details, so it is much more very the same. Total health expenditure in Pakistan in billions in 2011 and to 2014-15. 42.09, development expenditure 18.71, बस खत्म हो रहा है, and 23.38 percentage is minus, and health expenditure is 0.23, and similarly, other factors you have seen it. Health expenditure 1.7, private sector, public sector 0.9, total is 2.6. Private sector in India is 2.7, 1.1, and similarly in 2013 it is 2, 1, 3, 2.7, and 1.3. Total is 4 in India. Food availability per kg capital per annum. You can see it. Edible oil, milk, meat, cereals. In 2015, it is in Pakistan. It is 161, 7.5, 33, 190, 22, 6, and 14. Constraint challenges of population, suffering from extreme malnutrition, limited health sector involvement, lack of institutional capacity building, lack of adequate financial resources, large adolescent population in reproductive age, unfavorable socio-culture and economic profile, lack of coverage in rural area by NGOs and private sector. Gender inequity, lack of community participation, low literacy level, particularly of female, unmet demand for family planning, which is 20%. Mainstreaming population factor in national development planning, changes in atmospheric composition and consequent global warming. Increasing population impact, shortage of food, electricity, arable land, clean water, housing, health services, increase in crime, unrest, poverty, environment problem, congestion in household. The way forward, sustaining fertility decline, transition, development professional human resource, reducing maternal and infant mortality rate, addressing misconception and family planning, maintain the momentum already achieved in rural health, expanding and improving reproductive health service to remote areas to achieve the goal of universal access, sustain political commitment, bridging resource gap, meeting the unmet demand of family planning, involvement of religious leader to support population program. It is very much necessary. Building a strong partnership with private sector, NGOs, civil society, especially with chambers of commerce and industry throughout the country. How to cater health hazard, involvement with dignity, Ayurveda and Hakims, and homeopaths. Government should focus on operational research, developing viable partnership with national and international partners, improve detection and response to epidemics. So, thank you very much. सही टाइम पे
मैं एक बात और शेयर करना चाहता हूँ। कल जब ये लोग पहुँचे लेट काफ़ी, तो थोड़ा हमारा इंटरेक्शन होता है। तो डॉक्टर महबूब हुसैन, एक मिनट ज़रा खड़े हो जाए। अभी आप भी, आपके ब्रदर भी, मैंने उनको ये बात कही थी। मैंने कहा यहाँ इंडिया में ख़ासतौर पे जम्मू कश्मीर में अब लोग बाग जो है MLAs इन पर्टिकुलर बहुत लकी हैं, इसलिए कि आप तो ठीक है यहाँ पर आप बेगमात के साथ आए हुए हो, वहाँ पर उनको मैंने कहा ये प्रिविलेज है कि अपनी बीवी को कह कर के जा सकते हैं कि हम महबूबा को मिलने जा रहे हैं।
सही। So, Dr. Bhai Saab increasing the population, huh?
Pictures on Facebook, so you can go onto that page of Facebook and find yourself somewhere out there. And with due permission of Dr. Wahi and the organizing committee, we have all decided to club the last session along with the previous one. And we are going to withhold the felicitation ceremony for the last only. Is that okay, sir?
मैं बता देता हूँ.
Okay, please.
Parul is using women empowerment. Why in this sense? Because अभी जो सेशन हुआ है इसको चेयर करने के लिए डॉक्टर अब्दुल समताना वाला एंड डॉक्टर ज्ञान वाधवानी है. ज्ञान फॉर्चुनेटली और अनफॉर्चुनेटली ही हैपन्स टू बी हर हस्बैंड. और हस्बैंड कौन होता है कि जो आदमी जिसका हाथ बैंड बजे और हंसता रहे. तो वो सिचुएशन है. इसने बोला कि मैंने ज्ञान को बोलने ही नहीं देना.
15 minutes.
हाँ, टाइम घटा के उसका 15 मिनट्स कर दिया. आप देखिए इससे ज़्यादा और क्या एक्सपेक्ट करेंगे. आइए. अच्छा.
Sir is always great at cracking jokes. Well, all right. Now, for the last session, we have Dr. Gyandas Wadhwani from New Delhi. He's going to speak on homeopathy and epidermolysis bullosa under bullseye diagnosis. And we have Dr. A.M.H. Chimthanwala from Nagpur, who's going to speak on brain tumor under the theme bullseye diagnosis. I first invite Dr. Gyandas Ji Wadhwani. Oh, yes, and forgot. To chair this session, we have with us Dr. Prakash V. Shinde and Dr. Kailon. Kailon? Dr. Kalon? Dr. Kalon. Okay, I'm so sorry if... Please do. Please. Dr. Shinde, please. Announcement kya hai? We found one iPad outside, and if it's someone please claim. It's on the front table with us.
This is on, right? Now it is on. This way. Yeah. Front and back.
Officer, his love and passion for humanity and relentless and untiring effort for patients is commendable. He had many publications under his name in PAR, reviewed journal like Homeopathy or American Journal of Homeopathy, Homeopathy Clinics, etc. He has presented papers at many international seminars too. Now let us hear Gyandas.
Thank you so much, sir. Respected chairpersons, respected seniors in the audience, dear friends and colleagues. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the organizers for organizing a conference against all obstacles. And the conference is especially content-based. And the content is homeopathy, homeopathy, and homeopathy only. And I also thank them for allowing me to share some of my views. And digressing a little from the topic which I have to speak on, there's one very interesting thing, which we have to hear in the clinical practice time and again, that if you want homeopathy to work for you, you should have faith or belief in homeopathy or the homeopathic system of medicine. My dear, there's nothing which makes me more mad than this statement. Faith, belief, conviction has nothing to do with the facts of homeopathy. Homeopathy will work if there is homeopathicity to the remedy chosen, to the patient in front of you. Faith, belief has nothing to do with it. There are only 3 possible conditions where homeopathy, unfortunately, shall get the blame, but the homeopathic doctor may fail. First is when there is lack of knowledge. When there is lack of knowledge in the treating physician, homeopathy is bound to get a bad name, though the homeopathic physician has failed in his duties of studying up the subject thoroughly. The second is lack of time. A lack of time either given to the patient, because the doctor is in a hurry to see the number of patients, or lack of time when he's chosen a remedy and he's too much of a hurry to change it. That's the second condition, where again Homeopathy will get a bad name, though it is a fault of the homeopathic physician. The third possible condition is when there is lack of time. This is something to which we can do little. We can only, as they say, we can only add life to the years, not years to life. Now, with this belief and faith thing gone apart, and only with facts of homeopathy, I share with you some of my experiences in a condition called epidermolysis bullosa. Now, this clinical condition is not commonly seen, but it is one of these inherited autosomal autosomal dominant or a recessive genetic disorder which tends to run in families, though we also have cases with spontaneous mutation. Now, as the disease itself explains that primarily it is a bullous disorder in which there is some abnormality in the adherence of the skin, the protein composition of the skin due to some genetic abnormality. So every time there is a pressure or friction, it leads to bullae formation. Now, it is generally said that this disorder occurs in every racial and ethnic group throughout the world and affects both the sexes equally. The signs and symptoms are blistering of skin, deformity of or loss of fingernails and toenails, internal blistering including the throat, esophagus, upper airway, stomach, intestines, urinary tract, the genitourinary organs, skin thickening, hyperkeratosis, scalp blistering, atrophic scarring, milia, dental abnormalities, excessive sweating, difficulty in swallowing because the stricture formation, and of course there is nutritional deficiency, which is the major cause of death. Also, it can also lead to increased risk of developing squamous cell carcinoma, and very few cases survive till the adulthood. And according to the classification, as per the pathophysiology, we have three major kinds of epidermolysis bullosa with their subtypes as well. But the most common one is the epidermolysis bullosa, which is primarily involving the epidermal layer. So the scarring is minimum possible. Thankfully, it accounts for 92% of the identified cases of epidermolysis bullosa. The next variety is junctional epidermolysis bullosa, which is little more severe, and the cases tend to die out at a very young age. And I'll be presenting one of the cases of junctional epidermolysis bullosa with you. It accounts for about 1% of the cases known so far. And the third variety is dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. These babies are called butterfly babies because anywhere you touch them, they tend to go into blister formation. We've seen such cases as well. I'll be sharing one of these cases with you. And that is why they're called butterfly or cotton wool babies, because you have to carry them around with great care and comfort. Now, recently, they've proposed one or two more categories. One is hemidesmosomal epidermolysis bullosa, and the other one is epidermolysis bullosa acquisita, which is primarily autoimmune in nature. Diagnosis primarily is clinical first, and sometimes you might have to go in for biopsy in order to confirm the diagnosis because of its similarity to other similar conditions like pemphigoid. Then complications are infection, sepsis, death, and of course a high risk of developing metastatic squamous cell carcinoma, which is more common in the dystrophic variety of epidermolysis bullosa. As is required, that when you try to diagnose, you have to see what are the number of lesions, whether they are symmetrical or not, are they clubbed together or not, are they scattered out, are they localized or generalized, and what are the other appendages like the oral or the genitourinary area or the scalp. These are the areas which you have to examine and identify before you go in for the diagnosis of epidermolysis bullosa. In allopathy, they typically say that there is no known available treatment. There might be some surgical options available for the advanced cases, especially where there's stricture formation. They might be treating them sometimes with corticosteroids. Now, there are certain experimental treatment options available like protein or gene therapy, but so far there is no ray of hope, and they consider it an incurable condition. And the ray of hope for them is certainly homeopathy. The difference being that we, with the understanding of the entire personality, with the entire biopsychosocial makeup of the person, we can actually offer them a great ray of hope, as I've seen with a few experiences that I've had. And in fact, we're not the only one. I was reading this book called Skin and Autobiography. It's written by a cutaneous oncologist, Sharad P. Paul, and he says he's come to realize that each skin type has a unique characteristic and one treatment does not fit all. And this is nothing else but the concept of individualization. So this is a little boy we've been seeing for last 3 years nearly. Aditya, who was brought to us by his parents from Mathura. And that's the first time when we saw the little baby. That was his right leg. Now, one thing which we've always learned from my teachers is that when you see a patient, then the first thing that you should see is how the patient looks. So the physiognomy and the general body build-up, the color of the eyes, the shape of the nose, eyes, tongue, teeth, lips, they are very important for identifying the kind of personality and the kind of miasmatic influence that the person has. So that's the first thing that we identified. The baby had dark eyes, hair, saddle-shaped nose, large lesions on the right upper limb and right lower limb. Few lesions were there on the mouth and the left hand. Now he was born with a raw right forearm, hand, right leg, and right foot, and later had few lesions in the left hand too. Occasionally also had blisters on the upper and lower lips. Lesions were always painless and itching was completely absent. There were also episodes of hematemesis since the age of 6 months, and nearly every 2 weeks he used to have some hematemesis coming out. He underwent endoscopy and that confirmed the presence of the esophageal lesions. The other thing was there was a tendency for constipation. He used to skip days. Now, family history. Father had epilepsy, and many of the first cousins of his father also had epilepsy. Paternal uncle had epilepsy. One of his paternal cousin brother was suffering with EB. Paternal grandfather also had epilepsy, and there was some history of diabetes, hypertension, and tuberculosis. The other thing which we could make out with the 11-month-old baby after questioning with the parents was that the thirst was normally very poor. A lot of these kids, because of the oral lesions, they're not able to take anything inside. So that is one of the things. And in spite of all the lesions, there was a lot of perspiration on the scalp, and the thermal reaction was hot. That's all that we could get in the case. So we went further. What happened during the intrauterine life? So the mother informed that the baby was conceived nearly an year after marriage. It was a planned pregnancy. And both the parents were working as lecturers in a private MBA college. So they used to travel almost 40 kilometers by car every day. Now, during the 2nd month of the pregnancy, the father got an intimation that he's got an appointment in a government college. So he had to immediately resign from his present job, so he stopped going to the college. And because there are limited financial resources, the lady could not afford to drive to the college every day, so she traveled all through the way by bus, about 40 kilometers each side. So due to long hours of travel, there was less time for rest, and she felt kind of tired. And during the initial half of pregnancy, the gynecologist also pointed out during the ultrasound that the growth of the baby is slow. During the first trimester, there was also mild nausea, no vomiting. And what happened was that though the husband got an intimation for appointment as a government lecturer, but the final call for joining did not arrive for next 4 months. So there was some financial concern, anxiety, moreover, more because he had already resigned from the present job. Later on, 6th month onwards, he also shifted to another city, and the wife had to continue with the present job till the time they settled their finances. There was swelling in the both lower limbs 6 months onwards. There was generally, during the pregnancy, there was a desire for sweets 2+, grapes 1+. The mother gained about 10 kgs of weight, did not have pains during labor. Castor oil failed to produce further pains, so she underwent LSCS. And the birth weight of the baby was 3.2 kgs. And as I've discussed, the baby was born with a right upper limb, a raw right upper limb, and a raw right lower limb. So it's all the information that we could get. Any guesses as to the remedy? So the most important aspect which I found out in the case was the presence of the bullous eruptions, and there was absolutely no itching in the skin lesions. Along with that, there was a strong history for epilepsy in the family, strong on the paternal side. So combining these two things together, the remedy that, this is primarily a copy from the Boger Synoptic Key. He gives primarily 3 areas of strong action of this remedy: brain, nerves, and skin. And there's an extreme sensitivity to injuries and jar, which also is a hallmark of all the kids suffering with epidermolysis bullosa. So we gave him Cicuta, 30, 200, and 1M on 19th of August 2013. About 2 months later, we had a follow-up. There was improvement in the attending lesions at that time, which so far had not been healing for quite some time. After December 2013, that is nearly 4 months after the dose of Cicuta 30, 200, 1M was given, till now, he's never had hematemesis at all. Now, this is how the lesions continue to improve. This is, it continued to improve. And between May 2014 and May 2015, the frequency of the blistering, even after injuries, were found to improve. And the parents said there's nearly a 50% improvement in the time taken for the body to heal itself. The blisters were smaller in size and tended to heal without scarring. Oral lesions also improved. On 22nd of June 2015, the parents presented with a large bulle with slow recovery on the right knee for last 3 weeks. After a gap of nearly 5 to 6 months, the bowels were hard again, so we gave him a dose of Cicuta virosa, 10M unit dose. And this is the latest follow-up that we've had in the month of March. Recently, the baby, because the father is also in the government job, one of the dispensaries of which I'm in charge is South Campus, Delhi University. So they keep on visiting there regularly. And this is the current condition. His oral lesions are nearly gone. And as both the parents are MBA students and MBA professors and teachers, so they have a pretty objective analysis. And they said that, if so far, from August 2014 till now, if we sum up, we find that these are the important points which have happened over a period of time. There's no hematemesis, very few mouth blisters, and the baby can take spicy food now. After minor injuries, there is no blister formation. The larger bullae tend to heal within 15 days now. There's completely normal weight gain, active, cheerful, healthy child going to school. He's still being followed. But if you look at it, it is junctional epidermolysis bullosa, which is one of those varieties which is very difficult to treat and very difficult to heal. So far, in a period of nearly 2.5 years, we've given 2 times we've given the remedy, no repetition. So now this is the second case we saw recently in the month of October. This 5-year-old boy diagnosed with dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa was brought to our health center, South Campus, by his parents from Jafrabad. So again, when we go by the observation, so we found there was dark eyes and hair, slim built, average height, bluish sclera, wide spaced eyes, pushed up nose, pouting lower lip, gap in the stained teeth, open mouth with marked oral inflammation, all hallmark of a strong syphilitic stigma. So the presenting complaints were, this is the exact situation with which he came at that point of time. Apart from the oral lesions, there were strong cutaneous lesions all over the body. Lot of scarring, a lot of blister formation, and a phenomena what we call pseudosyndactyly. All the digits, they fuse together because of the inflammation, atrophy, and scarring. So this was the condition with which we saw him. Again, we went back into the history and we found the child was born with oral mucosal redness so that he could not suckle for the first 15 to 20 days of life. On the second day of life, he developed a large bulle on the lumbar spine. Later on, the right lower abdomen came by. Gradually, the bulle eruptions spread all over the body. And generally what they found over the years is that winters were better for the child compared to summers. And another thing which the parents mentioned, now that he's 5 years old, they've always noticed that he loves being taken out for a drive in winters, or during summers, he loves running back and forth in front of the blower of AC. He loves that. In family history, what we found, father had severe acne with scarring. Mother was recently diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis after the birth of the child. And the Dadaji suffered with diabetes and hypertension. In general, what we found with the child, he had a liking, strong liking for potatoes and paneer and dals and loved biscuits. There was a complete aversion to sour, stuff, milk, and fruits except mangoes. Didn't like any other fruit. Perspiration was profuse, especially on scalp and perioral region, and during sleep on the back of head. He preferred sleeping mostly on abdomen, and salivation was positive. He used to pass stool every 2 or 3 days, and he was